Hello, this is Tia and welcome to another video. Today we're doing another part in the latest story of my Clockwork Chronicles universe, we could say. Basically we are going to start reading chapter 3 of Hermitcraft Antihero. I do not know how long it will take, how many videos to do, but we'll see. But yeah, basically if you haven't read the first part, you probably should, because spoilers, there will be spoilers, but yeah, like the perspective is a little bit different, so like I don't expect crazy amounts of views for these videos. Not that it matters, it's just like something I enjoy doing, so why not? I just like sharing stuff, and that's just how I do it. Yeah. Let's get started. Chapter 3. Julius! A voice called his name as Julius scrambled to his feet, finding himself in a meadow surrounded by tall spruce trees. The voice had sounded familiar, yet faint. The voice cried out again, as Julius' heart skipped a beat. Mom? Julius stuttered out, looking around him, trying to locate where the voice was coming from. This can't be real. This had to be a dream. His mother had been gone for years, killed in an accident, according to his father. He never really, truly had explained what happened, his gaze looking distant whenever Julius had brought it up. Julius had only been 5 at the time. Mom, where are you? Julius, I'm over here, the voice of his mother called, somewhere to the east. Julius started to run, heading into the trees, calling for her, saying he was coming. Yet the more he ran, the more his mother's voice grew faint, as if she was fading. Mom! Julius cried, stumbling as he found himself flying off a cliff, screaming as he saw the dark waters below, searching like liquefied coal in the night. Before he hit the water, he sat upright in bed, smacking his head against the bunk bed above him as he groaned. He rubbed his head gingerly, looking up to the oak bed above him, surrounding a young man with the sound of snoring. There were about a dozen guards, double the amount that had been here before he'd gone to bed. Had Campbell called them over? Surely there'd be more, right? He pushed the covers off him, setting his feet on the cobbled floor beneath him. He looked over at the door, which was closed, nearly falling out of bed as he saw a figure standing in front of the door. The figure was tall, muscular, wearing a black vest with a white undershirt underneath, stained with red. His eyes were glassy, but a piercing blue in contrast to their unruly dark hair. He stared at the young man for a long moment before disappearing, as if he hadn't been there. Julius gulped. What's that? He shook his head, trying to shake the image out of his mind. Still, the man stood there, staring. That couldn't be possible. He was dead. He'd been dead for over a month now. The young man stood, hearing his bed creak, released from his weight as he approached the door, a chill running down his spine. Maybe it had to do with the soil of the lovely world. Perhaps it stemmed from some sort of spiritual power that allowed for those beyond to hunt their enemies. He shook his head. No, that made even less sense. Ghosts weren't real. They didn't exist. He was just hallucinating. Yeah, that was it. He was worried about his father, so he hallucinated seeing one of his old past victims. Maybe something about Impulse being so close. Proximity had something to do with it. You know, that makes zero sense, Julius. Quit it. The young man snapped at his thoughts, muttering to himself in annoyance. They still knew very little about the connection between YouTubers, especially those who were very close. What would happen if one of them was killed? Would the connection then be severed, as Gerald had theorized? Or was there more to it than he realized? Curious, Julius opened the door, stepping out into the hall before closing the door behind him. You're up early, a voice stated, as the young man jumped. Julius looked over to see one of the soldiers leaning against the wall curiously. Slept like 4 hours or something? What's the matter with you? What's the matter to you? Julius snapped angrily. You can't scare me like that, Victor. Victor smirked. I guess you were distracted. I don't normally surprise the likes of you, little killer. Little killer. Julius' face warmed. Shut up and leave me be. He marched up down the hall, down to where the laboratory would be. Maybe he'd find his father there. His father never seemed to sleep, never seemed to have time to eat much either. He was passionate about his work, and many complimented Julius in having a similar zeal. Julius managed a weak smile on the cooking face, opening the door to the lab with a hand as he stepped in. He saw some faces glance up, surprised. A couple of doctors in lab coats, one working on a small gadget while another standing by the brewing stand. "Mr. Royster, what are you doing up early?" one of the doctors asked curiously. "I thought Campbell told you to rest." "I did rest," Julius replied reluctantly. "I was just hoping." "What's wrong?" The female doctor by the brewing stand looked concerned. Julius felt his bottom lip quiver before he straightened. "Nothing is wrong, Dr. Rhinestone. Just wondering if anything came of my father." Julius stared at her in the eyes. They were in a shade of a stormy blue, almost looking gray in the lamplight. "We haven't heard from him," the other doctor, a male, stated from the counter. "Maybe Campbell might know." "He isn't busy, is he?" Julius frowned. "Probably asleep. It's about 4 a.m. Rhinestone shrugged, brushing back her dark blonde hair from her face. It rested just past the shoulders, with a few strands of gray intermixed. "I'll wait for him then." Julius sighed, starting to turn toward the hall. "You didn't say you had to go," the man interjected. "You can help Dr. Rhinestone with the concoction your father was working on, seeing as Campbell feels certain they've created a cure." "You sure?" Julius furrowed his brow. "Impulse wouldn't adamantly volunteer himself unless he knew something that we'd want to know." The man tapped a finger on the counter. Campbell could see the look of worry on his friend's face as well, when he suggested it. "Why would Tango intentionally shoot a fireball at his best friend then?" Julius replied calmly. "How do you know it was a fireball?" Rhinestone asked curiously. "I saw Campbell's hand," Julius swallowed, "and Jem shot at me with one when they tried to escape." Campbell might be right, though. Impulse did seem completely fine. Rhinestone nodded. "Come here. I want you to have a look at this and let me know what you think." Julius complied with the doctor, thinking it might be best. His father had shown him how to concoct one of the variants of poison he used to attack his victims. Julius looked at what the woman was working at. The other doctor, having gone back to work, quietly humming to himself. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about his father and his dream about his mother. She'd been calling for help. He could have sworn he'd seen her in the ocean, sinking beneath the waves, crying out for him. He shoved the image from his mind. It was just a dream. They weren't real. Yet for some reason, he couldn't help but see the piercing blue eyes bouncing in the waves, glowing almost starlight. Chapter 4. Julius looked up from the brewing stand when he heard a knock on the door. He saw Stuart leaning against the door frame calmly, as if he'd been standing there for a while. "Campbell would like to see you, Julius," Stuart said matter-of-factly. "What, are you his messenger boy or something now?" Julius teased with a smirk. "It's about your father." Stuart's expression was stone serious. Julius's face fell. "Where is he?" Julius put down the empty bottle, glancing over at Dr. Rhinestone, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Conference room, second door to your left." Stuart replied simply. "You've been up for a while, I hear." "Couldn't sleep," Julius grunted. "You're worried about your father. I get it." Stuart nodded. "I was the same way with my father and uncle before they will, Yeah, Julius' tone soured. Curious. "I'm sure he'll have news about him for you." Stuart smiled gently, pushing himself from the doorway. "Now let these scientists have the peace. I hope he wasn't bothering you." "Oh, not at all," Dr. Rhinestone beamed brightly. "He's a brilliant young lad, just like his father." Stuart said nothing in reply, gesturing for Julius to go. The young man didn't argue, wishing the scientist well as he trudged down the hall, both feeling elated at the thought his father might be through the door, as well as dreading what Campbell might want to say. And again, if his father was behind that door, surely he'd made himself known by now. Had something happened to his father? Had one of the YouTubers hurt him? Anger boiled inside Julius as he marched to the door, opening it to find the room. The long table, 6 chairs. Campbell stood at the front of the board of some kind. Not having made a move to suggest he'd heard him. Sir, you asked for me? Julius hated how small his voice sounded. Close the door, Julius. This conversation only needs to be between the two of us, the man replied, not turning around. Julius obeyed, ensuring the door was secure before walking across the room. You have news about my father? Julius asked, standing beside the man. Seeing the man's bandaged hands, Campbell rubbed it gingerly. I have been informed that your father unfortunately did not survive the attack. Campbell let out a long sigh. He was crushed under some rubble from an explosion. There was nothing we could do to save him. No. Julius shook, tears brimming his eyes. No, that can't be. I'm afraid so, son. Campbell nodded solemnly. Fortunately for him, I have a plan to avenge his death. You do? Julius looked over at the man curiously. Yes, but I will require your help again, seeing as you did well the last time. The man smiled at the boy. I know I didn't kill him like you asked. The man cut the young man off with a raised hand. No need to explain. Got the message across regardless. What matters now is that we need retaliation. The man's eyes gleamed. Sir, the cat has its dogs and helpers stationed by all the entrances to ensure no one can get in, Julius frowned. Julius. You should know by now that doesn't stop us. Campbell shook his head. We have a portal we can use to get you in. Oh, Julius nodded. Right, sir, I forgot. That's so soon, too. Campbell smirked. I don't blame you, though. You didn't help make the machine like that with that man. Why do you want me? Julius asked. I require the skills of an assassin, Campbell replied. I have been told you've been learning since you were 12? Yes, sir. Mr. A taught me himself, Julius replied. You don't have to ask me twice to avenge my father's death. Whoever did this will pay. And I believe I know who it is. Campbell showed the young man his hand. The same one who injured my hand. Tango? Julius met the man's gaze. Find him. Finish him. Campbell narrowed his eyes. By any means necessary. Julius nodded, straightened. Yes, sir, and we'll let you down. You never have let me down, Julius, the man chuckled. You are wise beyond your years, and formidable. I can see why Mr. A trusted you so much. Too bad he isn't here now, Julius sighed, shaking his head. Mr. A's time has run its course. Now it's time to bring about proper justice to those who choose to disobey. Campbell replied, looking back at the board. Give me a call when the deed is done. You like that voice? Yeah! I don't even know what happened. I just started doing that voice. Oh, yeah, just give me a call. We got everything done. You never know. I don't know. I just started doing it. Whatever. Got plenty of voices in there. Not all of them I do for a long period of time. That's why I don't try to impersonate people. It gets weird. I find it weird. And uncomfortable. I will. Julius nodded, turning to walk out of the room. And Julius? Campbell called, glancing over his shoulder as the young man froze. Try not to get yourself captured this time. I'll try. Julius' shoulders slumped. I'll avenge my father. He will pay. Ah, my boy. Campbell chuckled as Julius opened the door, closing it behind him, holding his head high as he neared the spiral staircase. He had a purpose now. He'd make sure those YouTubers paid for what they did to his father. All of them. He would make his father proud. He would make Campbell proud. Chapter 5. It's not that dark. Not that dark, don't worry. If you guys are a little bit uneasy, hey, you could turn it on now, but I mean, if you're here this far and you like these stories, then I guess, it's not that dark. Julius popped out in front of Steppy's house, hopping out of the minecart before breaking it with his sword and pocketing it away. He slunk behind the hill, hoping no one saw him. No one seemed to be guarding the front door, at least not from the outside. You could see Gregory's tree, still standing tall, one of the few things that obscured his view from the door. That probably meant no one could see him. He pulled on an invisibility potion, downing it before he was sure it was safe enough to venture out. He slunk toward the front door, peeking inside. There were no signs of helpers, or of dogs. This seemed odd to the boy. However, he could see someone standing in the storage room, almost like he was standing guard. It took him a couple of moments before Julius smiled. It was Tyler, which usually meant Tango had to be closed. He took a step back, cautiously looking around before donning his elytra wings. Launching off into the mid-afternoon sky, it took him seconds to spot who he was looking for in Stampy's enchantment and brewing room. Whatever that room is actually called, I forget, and there's no sign saying what it's called. So it's the brewing area and the enchanting area. So, the brewing and enchanting room does fit, even though the enchantment room is hidden behind a painting. If you know. It's like the brewing area. Yeah, which is very inaccessible to people who have wheelchairs. That's what happens. It took him seconds to spot who he was looking for and stop his enchanted and brewing room. Tango was hovering over a brewing stand as Julius glided safely down onto the glass roof. He pulled off his wings, knowing he'd be better hidden this way, as he took a deep breath. Hating the cat for his love of water as he sunk before landing gracefully on the ground before the Tango. Winston at the sound. "Who's there?" Tango asked, turning his head toward where Julius had landed. His ruby red eyes traced the area warily. This was the first time Julius was surprised the man alone. This would be his second attempt. Hopefully, with no interruptions from Tyler. "Show yourself!" "And why should I?" Julius taunted, seeing the hermit tense nervously. Tango extended his axe, holding it in hand. Julius stepped away from the water, knowing the hermit could probably hear his footsteps. "I came to send you and your friends a message." "A message? From whom, may I ask?" Tango demanded, trying to pinpoint his eyes where Julius was. "Campbell's, of course," Julius gloated. "I've heard what you've done to him, and my father." "Your father?" Tango frowned, puzzled by the boy's statement. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're the one who killed him," Julius sneered. "That's why I'm here. Payback." Tango took a step back, his face going pale, as he nudged against the counter. "What do you mean by payback?" "You're trying to call for help, aren't you?" Julius extended his dagger, trying to stall the inevitable. "Help!" Tango yelped, lunging toward Julius, who sidestepped immediately, pouncing on the hermit. He struck the hermit square in the back with the blade, hearing a guttural scream of agony and pain as they fell to the floor. "Calling for help will do you no good, Tango," Julius whispered into the hermit's ear. "You know you can't escape fate forever. Get off me!" Tango groaned in pain, screaming as Julius pulled the dagger out of the wound, pocketing it. He looked up as he heard someone rise from the water. "Tango!" Tyler commanded, sword immediately in hand. As he charged forward, Julius pounced off, trying to stay quiet. "You're hurt!" "Julius, he's here," Tango moaned, tears streaming down the hermit's cheeks. Tyler tensed, looking up, glancing around the area before landing on where Julius stood. Julius gulped. He had to guess the cause was starting to get better at spotting invisibility bubbles. He bolted for the water elevator, pushing its way in as he swam for his life. He had to get out of there. Maybe Tyler would follow him. Maybe it would be the mistake that would tarnish the man's career. His thought before faded. "Julius, come back!" a voice called from below as he made it to the glass ceiling, quickly donning his wings as he grabbed his rockets. He looked down to see Beat-Ups and Jem glaring up from below at him. Beat-Up's eyes looked somewhat concerned and perhaps sad. He could see Tyler rolling Tango onto his back, lifting the hermit's head as he took out a regen potion from the medical box beside him. Julius ignored the hermit, launching off into the sky, hearing Beat-Ups call out his name again. "We want to talk to you!" He was too far away to hear him now, and glancing back, he noticed that they'd just gotten to the roof of the enchanting and brewing room. Hopefully, they wouldn't see him from here. He'd done what he'd come to do. What did they even want to talk to him about anyway? They'd probably capture him and lock him up. They were always like that. Liars, promise breakers. Every single one of them. Chapter 6. We can continue. Julius slunk to the toy shop at least 20 minutes later, pocketing his communicator as he met eyes with Saul, who was still standing guard. What, never seen a door open by itself before? Julius teased with a snicker at the man's body, physically deflated with relief. Don't scare me like that, kid, Saul grinned, shaking his head. Have you stopped by the milk bar yet? I hear the milk is exceptional. Yeah, I want to slow down any potential pursuers. Julius pulled out a bucket of milk, downing it as he reappeared, putting the empty bucket away. Smart, Saul nodded. Did anyone see you? Not literally, no, Julius shrugged. Tyler saw the bubbles, which means they're getting better at spotting them. Saul nodded with a frown. Well, to keep that in mind, then. What about the cat? His helpers? That I don't know. Julius went over to the doll, pulling down the arm as the hole opened up for him. Campbell wanted me to get back here as soon as I could. I suppose the mission went well, the soldier replied. Julius nodded. As well as it can be, yes, but be sure to close the door after me. I got this kid. Don't you worry, Saul beamed. Sure 19 isn't necessarily a kid, Julius pointed out with a coy smile. You're still a kid in my eyes, Saul nodded. You might be smart, but you don't know everything. I never said I did. He jumped into the waterfall, holding his breath until he arrived at the pool, climbing out. Why did they have to get wet every time they had to enter? Was this some sort of joke for Stampy? Julius wrung his shirt, trying to drain as much of the water out as he could. The town was empty. There weren't signs of Campbell's soldiers anywhere. Julius walked over to the house Stuart had shown him, opening the door to find the staircase. He closed the door behind him before starting his descent. He arrived at the bottom, finding to his surprise Stuart standing at the portal, checking over some coordinates. The man greeted him with a cheerful smile. What are you doing here? Julius pondered curiously. I live here, the man joked, shaking his head before stepping away. Campbell sent me on a secret mission. I should be gone for a couple of days. The recruits will be waiting for me. What are you guys doing? Julius asked curiously. We need to teach her a lesson or two, the man replied simply. She's not invisible. No one is, Julius lifted his chin. Not even the YouTubers. Agreed. The man put a hand on the portal frame. How did your mission go? I got the message across, but Tyler stopped me from finishing the target. Stuart sighed. They just don't give up, do they? Tyler was able to see me even though I was invisible as well, so I got out of there as fast as I could. Smart lad, Stuart beamed, taking a step toward the portal. I can see Mr. A taught you well. Yes, sir, Julius nodded. Good luck on your mission. Thanks, kid. I'll need all the luck I can get. The man laughed, giving the boy a wave before disappearing through the portal. Julius waited for a moment at the foot of the stairs. The only sound he heard was the humming of the portal. Once he was certain no one else was coming through, he went into the hall to find something to do. He wondered how Dr. Rhinestone was doing on the potions, how the other doctor was on the gadget he was tinkering with. All unformed in Julius' throat, a part of him wishing he could find his father there too. Head over his work, focusing on the task at hand, always looking up enough to give him a smile before getting back to work. He'd never seen his father smile again. He'd hear his father's laugh. Julius stopped at the door of the laboratory, tears stinging his eyes. He was tempted to put a hand by the door to open it. He couldn't right now. And he wasn't even sure if he could again. It would never truly be the same. He was alone, with nobody, apart from his friends here, like Stuart, Saul, Campbell. Well, Campbell was more his boss now, but the man seemed to see himself like a father to him. He turned away, walking toward one of the conference rooms, hoping to find someone to talk to distract him from his own thoughts, thinking about his father and his mother. What is he supposed to do now? Chapter 7. Julius, please! A voice pleaded as the man loomed over his victim, his dagger in hand, sparkling with flame as he smiled. He looked over at the sound, seeing the horror-stricken face. He knew that the YouTuber wanted to lunge at him, to stop him. But the only thing stopping her was the headband around her forehead. The guard with the controller stood at the door, silently watching, as if waiting expectantly. All you had to do was answer some questions, Gemini, Julius sneered, his gray eyes gleaming with delight. I don't dish out the punishments for disobedience. You'll kill him, Jem insisted, inching forward before gasping in pain. Step closer, woman, or I'll shock you, the guard butted warned. It will hurt. Please, Julius. Jem had tears streaming down her face. Julius could hear the groans of his victim beneath him. He's already suffered enough. Clearly you haven't. Julius narrowed his eyes, moving his gaze back down to the victim as he froze. Horror! Where you expect to see Liam? His bright red curls and piercing blue eyes was a woman. A woman with dark blonde hair, her eyes piercing blue. Tears rolled down her face, scrunched up in pain. She was screaming, but he couldn't hear her. His eyes snapped open as he stared up at the bug above him, gasping in fear. The woman was gone, yet he could still see her face, pleading for him to stop. It had been a dream. It hadn't been real. He wanted to call out her name, but he knew he'd look silly if he did. Julius put his hands to his face and quietly groaned, sliding his hands down his face as he closed and opened his eyes again. He nearly flew out of bed by what he saw next. Quietly floating above him, his face inches from Julius, the ghost's eyes were ablaze, like bright blue fire shining through a glacier of ice. Julius wanted to scream, wanted to cry for help, but he couldn't make a sound. Weight pressed on his chest as the ghost stared down at him, like its blue eyes were piercing into his soul. They were not full of warmth and compassion, not full of pain and fear. Was it disappointment? Was it anger? He wanted the ghost to go away. He wanted it to leave him alone. Julius closed his eyes, feeling a shudder crawl down his spine. The atmosphere around him seemed colder, even though he was wrapped in a blanket. After a moment, he was gone. It was gone. Julius opened his eyes, letting out a sigh of relief. The ghost was gone. Julius didn't move from his bed for a long moment, finally hearing the reassuring sound of men snoring. He wasn't sure how long it had been since he'd called it a night. He climbed out of bed, reluctantly, careful to be quiet as he headed toward the door. Apologies. Opening it before closing it behind him. He saw Victor still standing at the door, half-conscious, barely keeping himself from dozing off. You okay, kid? Victor smiled sleepily at the young man. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine. Julius shook his head slowly. Is it okay if I hang out with you for a bit? I don't want to be alone right now. I've got no problem with that, Victor yawned, gesturing for the wall beside him. Julius leaned back against the wall quietly. I heard the mission went well. As well as it could. Julius shook his head. The cause has gotten good at stopping us though, especially in regards to the hermits. Bummer. Victor stared off into the distance. Sorry about your father, kid. I miss him too. Julius nodded sadly. Do you know what happened there? Campbell was the only one, apart from you, who got out of that building. The man replied bitterly. Any enemy? Julius reminded him. They don't count. The man huffed in noise. It'd be better if it had killed a lot, but alas didn't. Julius nodded. You know, when I mentioned to Tango that he had killed my dad, he seemed a bit confused. Victor snorted. He was probably just playing you. Maybe you're right. Julius looked down at the floor. Have you ever had dreams about your family? Don't you miss them? Sometimes, Victor said quietly. Although I don't necessarily dream about them. You're having dreams about your father. No. Julius continued to stare at the floor. Blake, then? Victor smirked. My mother, Julius confirmed. We lost her in an accident when I was 5. Blake was too young to remember her. Victor nodded. Was she nice? Julius swallowed, an echo of a memory coming back to him as he closed his eyes. He was on the floor in the living room, playing with his toys, hearing his parents having a conversation in the kitchen. The voices had grown steadily louder and louder, forcing the boy to look up as he got to his feet, holding a small figurine of a dog. Daddy? Julius arrived at the kitchen entrance, stopping the conversation mid-sentence. His father's gaze softened when he turned to see the young 5-year-old boy. What is it, son? What is it, son? The man knelt at the boy's level, putting a hand on his shoulder. Can you play with me? Juliet asked quietly, looking into his father's dark gray eyes. Like so. I'm sorry, but I can't. I have things to do. The man patted him on the top of his head. Maybe tonight if all goes well. Julius brightened. Okay. He watched as his father went to the front door, leaving the house a moment later, leaving him alone with his mother. I can play with you, she offered gently, with a smile, putting down a newspaper she'd been holding. Julius beamed, running into the living room again, pulling his mother into the room by the hand, showing her his toys before she knelt at his level, picking up one of the toys. Yeah, she was nice. Julius said quietly, looking up at Victor, who nodded. I'm sure she'd be proud of the young man you'd become. The Victor smiled at him, nudging the boy playfully. I don't know, Julius admitted. I don't think she agreed about how much my father spent on work. It's important work, Victor replied matter-of-factly. Sometimes you have to make those kind of sacrifices to ensure that you love... Let me try that again. Sometimes you have to make those kind of sacrifices to ensure those you love are able to thrive. I see that, Julius sighed, although he wasn't so sure deep down. He knew Blake had a point, as did Impulse. His father hadn't given much time to be with him. Not until later, of course. His father had told him he'd done it for him, to give him the best life he possibly could. Set an example. Uncertainty crept into the boy's heart as questions floated in his mind. Did hurting people make any bit of a difference? The enemy was still alive, and, well, still fighting, still resisting. People were suffering, pain, and in agony. Innocent people who hadn't deserved to have everything stripped from them. Was this really what his mother really wanted? His father had created a poison that could stall the healing factor, killing anyone it affects slowly. He'd created it to hurt people. Julius himself had hurt people, both YouTubers and non-YouTubers. He wanted to believe this was for the greater good, as he'd been told over and over, but was it really? When he had the image of his mother's pain-stricken face, he tortured her? Did he hurt her? You're thinking about your father again, aren't you? Victor guessed. You couldn't have been able to save him. He was gone long before we got there. I know. Julius pushed himself from the wall. Where are you going? The man frowned, watching the boy take a few steps down the hall. A walk. I need time to think. Julius said matter-of-factly. Maybe someone should go with you. The man pushed himself from the wall, catching up to him. I need to see my father, Julius replied softly. He's grave. Victor paused before nodding. Just give me a sec to grab one of the other guys. I'll go with you. Julius nodded, letting the man go as he opened the door to the barracks. Part of him was tempted to go off on his own, but he knew deep down it was a bad idea. There was no telling where the enemy might be, or if he'd even be seen. He knew beat-ups and Gem had wanted to talk to him. He doubted it was for anything good. He wasn't in the mood for talking anyway. He needed to see his father. I think I'm going to end that there. That's fun. Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and would consider coming back with the next one. You never know, it could be already out, but I don't know about that because these are usually done every Monday. Because, I mean, why not? Why not every Monday? It's nice. It's nice to do videos on Mondays. But yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Whenever that might be.